I can get any book on the bestseller list. I feel comfortable guaranteeing any book a minimum of 10,000 plus sales.
Meet Tyler Wagner, a #1 New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestselling author, serial entrepreneur and investor who has built multiple 8-figure businesses through innovative scaling strategies and strategic partnerships.
New York Times is different because they'll actually look into the book and stuff. But the other 4 lists, I haven't tried this, but I literally believe I could probably get a blank book on their bestseller list.
And in today's episode, he's going to share how you can become a #1 best-selling author. And not only that, he shared as well the realities behind being an entrepreneur, how he built successfully the first business he ever tried.
I was $80,000 in debt when I dropped out of school, and I had a 6-month runway before interest loan payments were due back.
As a founder and CEO of Authors Unite since 2011, Tyler has revolutionized hybrid publishing, empowering more than 4,000 authors to publish and market their books successfully.
I will work for free for somebody that is in a place that I would like to get to. I would even pay Ray Dalio to intern for him. I think it's literally worth paying him to work for free for him.
His proven systems have helped clients sell millions of books and achieve bestseller status across every major platform, from the New York Times and Wall Street Journal to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and USA Today. Tyler's expertise in book marketing is unmatched. He didn't shy away from answering some very hard questions that few CEOs out there dare to answer. Enjoy. What's all the risk that you took that nobody agreed with you at the time?
Well, I wouldn't say there was a minority that agreed with me, but it was probably when I decided to drop out of college when I was about 19 years old. Now, when I think about it, it seems like it wasn't that big of a risk, like to the me now mentally. But at the time, it felt like the biggest risk in the world. And I had so many doubts and questions and worries. But I just, it kind of came down to the fact that I knew that corporate America was not really meant for me, like suit and tie every day, 9 to 5. Obviously, for a lot of people, it works pretty well. But for me, I knew after about the first year in college, because I think it was right after the first year is when I dropped out. I just knew it wasn't the direction. And what helped me realize that actually was the 4-Hour Workweek book by Tim Ferriss. One of my friends introduced me to that book in school, in college. And it was literally within, I want to say, 2 to 3 weeks from reading that book is when I made the decision to drop out. So it was pretty fast. And my parents, they were, I think, 50-50. They were supportive, but, a little worried. And then a lot of my friends, they were supportive, but I think they thought I was a little crazy. And then the majority of kind of like outside circle, when I announced it, I think most of them thought I was like going down a really bad and destructive path or something like that. But the reality was I was dropping out to write a book and try to start my own business, which ended up working out. But yeah, so to answer the question, it felt very risky at the time.
Yeah, I feel you. I was in the same situation. I was in the second year, and I already realized that in order to make something out on this life, you need to build some sort of expertise, some sort of experience. And like sitting few years on those benches won't build that real life experience. So I hire myself full time. And obviously, I wasn't able to attend classes anymore. I was like, what I'm doing here. And I quit that. I started a new university that I was able to do on my own pace. And yeah, and same with you. Like a lot of people, you're crazy. This is risky. This is that, and so on. But sometimes that type of pressure pays dividends. Was the same for like that pressure created something meaningful in that moment, or that came later?
Yeah, well, I will say one of my mentors, he loves this quote. I don't know who said it, but like the quote's like pressure makes diamonds. And so I love that quote. And it seems, obviously it's true for diamonds and it seems to be true for people as well. I would say, and let me know if I'm a little off on the answer here, but for me, it paid off pretty quickly. And I will say that when you're like a few times early on in the business, I've been running my business, Authors Unite. I've one other one, but Authors Unite's the core one for 15 years. I literally started it when I was 19, 20, and I'm 34 now. So I feel like there was some luck there in the sense, you always hear the statistics like 9 out of 10 first time businesses fail. So the fact that I've been able to have this business and for the most part on an upward trajectory for 15 years and it be my first one, I feel like there's got to be some luck there. But regardless, the most like pressure moments, I do feel like you're right there where it turned into the biggest opportunities because it's kind of like when your back's against the wall and you are like forced to make a big decision, those are the moments that multiply if the right decisions made, obviously. Those are the moments that seem to multiply the most. And it's kind of, it plays out in all these. I was just thinking about like the crypto market recently, for example, like, and we don't need to go whatever you want to talk about, but we don't need to go all deep into it. But ultimately, stock market, crypto investing in general, what I have found, it's basically, and there's traders and all that, but for me, just over the long term, just buying the things that I believe in and not getting emotional when the market dips. And that market dip is kind of that same experience of, even though in reality my back's not against the wall, it feels like it in a sense because you're like, oh my God, I just lost. If you don't sell, you don't actually lose the money, but in value, you lost, millions of dollars or whatever it is. But if you can make the right decision there, which if you believe in the things you're invested in for the long term, you just double down right in those moments. And I think for me, that's what it was in the early days. Like when I dropped out of school, instead of like, and nothing wrong with this, but instead of taking 6 months off, right, or something like that, which I think some people do, I just doubled down. Like my first thing was writing a book. And then I wanted to be a public speaker. And then throughout my online posts of my book experience and speaking at conferences, I just started to become aware that so many people wanted to become authors because I was getting so many messages and feedback from people just like asking me like, how'd you write it? How'd you publish it? How'd you market it? Those were the three kind of typical questions. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a business. Like I didn't write the book to help other people with books, but if you can stay, and I guess I'll kind of end the answer in this is like, if you can stay level headed, and it is difficult, like it's inevitably emotions will arise, but if you can kind of be aware of them and stay level headed, then in those moments, I was $80,000 in debt when I dropped out of school and I had a 6 month runway before those college like interest loan payments were due back. So I had everything against me. You know what I mean? Like I was scared. Like, yeah, I mean, it was pressure, but I took it as it was the reality of the situation. I was like, okay, I'm going to write this book. The book ends up becoming a bestseller. And then from that, people just started asking me. So, yeah, if you can stay level headed in those moments, they become your biggest multipliers, I guess is the way to answer that.
And that's the case, right? Because often we make this decision from a place of fear. But if you manage to calm yourself down and to level yourself, as you mentioned, I think that's powerful. But I want to rewind back because often people like start writing a book or becoming public speaker once they build an entire career, either in corporate or they run their business for years and so on. But your trajectory intrigued me because you start at such a young age to write your first book and you managed to make it a bestseller and then you build a business out of it. So how that happened? Like, what was the book about, and what triggered that business idea apart from the things that you mentioned?
Yeah, no, great question. And one last thing on fear, and I actually got this on the 4 Hour Work Week. I should have said it in my previous answer, but a lot of times we're pretty irrational with fear. Like we think that something terrible will happen that's like way worse than the reality. And what I mean by that is like dropping out of school, right? It's like, what's the worst that could happen? I had all these irrational fears that I would become a failure, and I would have to go back to school as an older guy, and then I would be the old guy in the grade, and you know what I mean, just like ego type things. And the reality was, the worst case scenario is I would end up back at my parents' house, right, and just try another business. And my parents happen to have a pretty good house, so it's like it's not that bad, right? So it's just funny. If you really think through your fears to the end point, then you realize that they're really the end result, if everything goes wrong, is not that bad. So it's just funny once you kind of realize that. But to answer your question, so I think the perfect time to write a book for people is at, well, really any time, but 2 points would be when you're first starting a career in a certain industry or niche. And then the second time would be like after you have that 10, 20 years of experience. And then I guess actually a third time would be like a memoir, like later in life or something. I think that's a really good time just to like leave a legacy, all your life lessons and stuff. But for me, what it was is the reason I was writing a book is I wanted to be a public speaker. And I had gone to all these conferences after I dropped out of school because after I dropped out, my realization was, okay, well, I don't have college to teach me anything now because I'm not in it anymore. So what are the ways that I'm going to keep learning and growing without college? And my realization was reading books and going to conferences. So I just doubled down on that. Like I've been to, I don't know the actual amount, but it's got to be 100 to 200 conferences. And I won't go too deep into this unless you ask about it later. But basically, what I was doing, I was going to all these events for free when I was younger. And these were like big events. Like the first one I got into for free was called Mastermind Talks. And Tim Ferriss was the keynote speaker. So I actually met him like 6 months later. What I was doing is, and I got this from this guy, Andy Durish, who spoke at my college. What he said is when you're younger, you can kind of leverage that in a way of you can reach out to people and explain to them, like, I'm an aspiring entrepreneur. I'm super young. I'm in debt. So I don't have any money to pay for your conference, but I would love to come to your conference and I'm willing to put in like sweat equity in exchange for allowing me to come to the event. And I tried that out tons of times. And dude, I can't tell you, it worked so many times. Like I was the first event, it was $5,000. I couldn't afford that, the Tim Ferriss one. And the founder of the event, his name was Jason. I literally reach out to him with that email and then we get on Skype. This is before Zoom days, right? Like 15 years ago. So Skype is what we were using. But the next day we get on a Skype because he responded that quickly. And we're just talking. And basically the exchange was he would fly me out, let me come to the event for free as long as I helped him in like putting on the event and finding him sponsors and stuff. So I worked for him for free for a few months. And then next thing you know, I'm backstage miking up Tim Ferriss at the event. Like it was, so either way, for everybody young listening to this, that works really well.
And I want to pause there for a second because I think it's one of the most underrated advice that people share usually in the business space. Like just do things for free for others, and not only you learn from them while you're doing it, but you are there like absorbing that information from people that already walked the path. And even if you're older, I will argue, like I know a person that was, I think, 36 or something when did something similar, and it paid dividends long term, like helping the likes of Ray Dalio and others to pull out events and learning from them directly. I'm like, that's a no-brainer. But people usually are afraid to, like, oh my god, I need to be paid in order to do it.
Yeah, sorry. That's what I was going to say because I think there's kind of two different thoughts there, and the one thought is kind of the employee mindset, and it's kind of limited of like if I'm putting in time to this, I need to be paid for it. And the growth mindset, or maybe more like entrepreneurial mindset, is I will work for free for somebody that is in a place that I would like to get to. And even to the point, say it's Ray Dalio or Mark Cuban, I would even argue and go further than that. Like if you had the money to pay Ray Dalio to intern for him, I think it's literally worth paying him to work for free for him. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just such a different mindset. And if you can get to that mindset, the growth will be just so dramatic, right? Because you're literally learning directly from the people that you would like to be in their situation, right? So yeah, I agree with you. It's super undervalued, and I think when a lot of people hear it, it just kind of goes in one ear out the next, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't know, like I don't have the time," or "Who's gonna say yet?" And it's like, dude, if you send 10 of these emails, you're bound to get one or two yeses, and then if you send hundreds, you'll get dozens of yeses, right? And it just compounds. It's kind of like a numbers game.
Yeah, because
Um,
all the people that already arrive at a place at a certain level in business or life, they were where you are now, and someone else said yes to them to intern for them and learn from them, and so on. And
yeah,
yeah, it's a hack at the end of the day that should be more used, especially nowadays.
oh my gosh, I agree. Like with the internet, obviously, and just like the accessibility and finding out people's information, just like how easy it is, you can pretty much get anybody's email nowadays, even if it's a company email, or with LinkedIn, like finding who, like you could find probably who Ray Dalio's assistant is, reach out to that person. So there is really no excuse. It just comes down to some effort, and you can pretty much get a hold of anybody, is what I think. But either way, to answer your original question, when I was going to all these events, the realization I had was, because I remember my first goal was to be a public speaker. To me, I was like, I'm an outgoing guy. I love podcasts, love talking to people. So I'm going to travel the world, be a public speaker. That was my idea. But again, 19, in debt, no expertise. Like, who's going to pay me to speak? Like, nobody in their right mind would pay for that, right? Because there's nothing for me to say, basically. So, what I realized is for me to get somewhat on a level playing field with the competition of other speakers, is I noticed that almost all the speakers at events were authors, or better yet, best-selling authors for some of them. And it was just like such a no brainer in a sense. Like once I realized it, it's literally like at any conference you go to, probably like 80% of the speakers are authors. Like that's almost like universally the case, at least in the business entrepreneurial space. So that's why I decided to write the book. And the first book I wrote, and that's the one that kind of started everything, it's called Conference Crushing. And this was just literally like a 70-page little book. Like the spine wasn't even thick enough to have the title written on the spine. That's how thin this thing was. And what it was about is basically I put together, it was kind of like an action guide of what to do before, during, and after when you go to business conferences to maximize your experience and your ROI at conferences. So when I launched it, it became a bestseller on Amazon. Since then, I've written, I don't even, maybe about 10 books or so. And one of them hit number one on the Wall Street list. So that's kind of like my top book. But this original one, what I was doing is after I launched it and it became a bestseller, I was proactive again. And I started reaching out to conferences directly and just saying, like, hey, this book has sold thousands of copies. It hit number one bestseller, and it's about how to maximize your time at conferences for the attendees. Would you be open to having me like speak at your event? And I got mostly no's, honestly, but through hundreds of reach outs, I got about a dozen yeses. And I was paid anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, which at the time was like a ton of money to me. You know, like this was like I can pay rent now. Like this is awesome, and pay my interest loans and stuff. So either way, I did about, like I said, about a dozen events. And then what I realized is like kind of there was multiple reasons, but the realization was I could continue down this path and probably make a pretty good living. But traveling everywhere, I do enjoy it. But when it's like only for 2, 3 days at a time and you're constantly in hotels, like I just started to more enjoy having a home base, I guess, pretty quickly, and travel sometimes, but not constantly. And then there was a couple other reasons that kind of turned me off by it. But regardless, it was not just that. The other thing was just the awareness from doing these events and posting my experience of writing the book online. I was getting hundreds of messages on Facebook. It was the kind of main platform of people asking me how I did it and asking if I had some sort of service to help them do the same thing. And I realized then I was like, I actually don't need, all I need is a computer. Like, I don't need to go anywhere. All I need to be, I can be anywhere I want as long as I have my laptop. and then I can help other people become best-selling authors, and I can make more money doing that than speaking and literally not have to move. You know what I mean? So it was like it just started to kind of get better and better. And then that's when I started Authors Unite, basically, was the next step in the progress, I suppose.
Yeah, and that was like I think more than 10 years ago, right? 2011 or something. And now, like every single person that's in business is writing a book. You are so like ahead of this wave, and you basically help so many people sell millions of books. What's the actual secret behind that? How someone can become a bestseller? Because I truly believe it's not luck.
Yeah, no. It's not luck. My first book was somewhat luck, but then when I figured out the algorithm and stuff and I could repeat it for other people, then definitely it became not luck at all. So basically, and we can go as deep as you'd like, but I'll kind of just touch a little bit on some of the lists. So there's 5 core bestseller lists, and there's even more than 5, but the core ones, they're Amazon, Barnes and Noble, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and New York Times. So those are like the 5 main. Amazon is the easiest one. Like literally anybody can become an Amazon bestseller if you have like I'd say like 50 colleagues, friends that you could gather together to all buy your book on the same day. So Amazon, and it's slightly changed over the years, but kind of a concluding algorithm of Amazon is you basically just want to get as many sales as possible within 1 hour to 1 day. And if you get, and then you put your book in specific categories on Amazon. And if you get, depending on the competition of the categories, if you get, say, for a non-competitive category, if you get like 50 to 100 sales, the algorithm in 1 day, the algorithm will like kick in very dramatic, and then your book will spike all the way to number one. So that Amazon really, like, we offer it as a service, but people can do it on their own, in all honesty. So that's the easiest one. Barnes and Noble is similar, very similar, but obviously getting people to buy on Barnes and Noble or bn.com is harder than Amazon. So, but very same like algorithm. And then Wall Street Journal, that one you need about like 6,000 sales in a week. USA Today, you need some physical and some ebook. I'd say about 500 to 1,000 physical and then some ebook. That'll get you on USA Today. And all those that I just mentioned, we can guarantee all of those. New York Times is the only one that we have a high success rate with it, but it's the only one that can't be guaranteed because it's technically like an editorial list. And for that one, there's like 5 criteria. That one I could talk about for an hour in itself. It's very complicated, but essentially, depending on the week, if you get, I'd say like 3,000 minimum. Some weeks you need like 10,000 physical and ebook sales combined. And then you also need to have like social proof and stuff. Like you need to be featured in certain outlets and just have like a good, if somebody Googled you or your book, you need it to kind of say positive things and be in the right places, if that makes sense. So there's some PR components to it. But regardless, leading kind of more deeper into your question, like how would you get those sales? Because that's the biggest thing, at least for the 4 initial lists that I mentioned. Again, NYT is a little different, but the 4 other ones, they're all sales. So if you get enough sales, you get on the list. How we do it is in the earlier days, if on Google, and they still have these out there today, if you go to Google and type in like ebook promotion sites, there are hundreds of these email lists that people have built over the years to basically notify people when a book is discounted. Some of them are for like 99-cent ebooks or for discounted physical books. It just depends on the list. And once I discovered this, what I did is we've worked with about 5,000 authors now. So like the initial, I'd say few hundred authors, I was able to guarantee them Amazon bestseller. And then what I would do is I would test out these different email lists on their books, and I would only test one at a time so I could get like a true test of how it worked. And I'd say probably one out of every like 50 times, the client would get like thousands of sales. And I was like, okay, wait a second. That wasn't me. That wasn't them. And my fail safe was like, I knew even if the list failed completely, I had my team and their friends all buying on the same day. So they would still get the result regardless. But either way, through that trial and error, I gathered it was probably about 20 different lists over a period of a couple years that would consistently get, anywhere from a couple hundred to a few thousand sales. And then what I did is I figured out the other lists, like how they worked. And then I reach out to the email list owners and ask them, like, hey, can I buy your email list? Like, I want to give you a good offer. I use you all the time. I like the results. I just want to buy your list outright or pay for exclusivity. And now, basically, what that turned into is we have a list or a combination of lists that equal 5 million plus people. And these are all book buyers, right? Some of them are discounted ebook buyers, some of them are for physical books. And that's how we can literally guarantee any book. I would say I feel comfortable guaranteeing any book a minimum of like 10,000 plus sales. And it's just from these email lists is honestly how we do it.
And I'll
So,
throw something at you now, like, what if the book sucks?
oh, okay, great question. So here's the truth is I can get any book on the bestseller list. Again, New York Times is different because they'll actually like look into the book and stuff. But the other four lists, I haven't tried this, but I literally believe I could probably get a blank book on their bestseller list. Like that's like so you see, like it's not an accident, right? It's not
Mhm.
luck. And it has nothing to do with the quality of the book for the most part. Like I think if it looked absolutely ridiculous or if it was like, about something, I don't know, like a erotica or something, sometimes those they won't work because the list doesn't want that type of book on there. But as long as, it had a good cover, decent title, like how to grow your business, right? Or that's not a good title, but whatever, like a basic title, and then no content in the middle, I literally think that would still hit the list. So that shows you how algorithmic it is. But and you're priority thinking this. The only thing I will say is like we have thousands of success stories on hitting the bestseller lists, but then the success stories of like authors selling for years and years and years, those are outliers, right? Because for the long term, that is unpredictable because the market decides that, right? So I can give any book a chance of long term success and I can guarantee its short term success. But the long term, that comes down to the quality of the content. And there's just so much competition nowadays. So, yeah. So, really, the formula, if you want I guess you could call it like a perennial bestseller, like long term, you would do a big campaign in the beginning, but also you don't want to just put together a decent book and expect these amazing results. You have to deliver a lot of value for it to have that long term success.
Yeah, indeed, because the reality is that, all right, when you have the number best-selling title next to your name, or you have a book at the end of the day and such, it's such a huge authority builder in people's eyes. Like you mentioned, like every public speaker. Now, if you look at the biggest podcast in the world, like probably 90%, if not more, of people that are on those podcasts, they are authors. And still, a lot of people might arrive there by simply like playing the algorithm in a sense. For example, how you differentiate who you work with in order to not make an authority someone that is like selling something that
Well, in all honesty, I wish I had a better answer to this, but in the earlier days, I would say I was probably paying closer attention to that. But now the reality is like I have like a 20-person sales team, a full-time assistant, and like manages literally everything of my life down to the text message. So like everything is filtered through my assistant Lisa. And I say all that to say that like we have some weeks where we're doing like 10 to 15 bestseller campaigns. And in the earlier days, I didn't read every book and look into every person, but I had the time to do a little bit of a deeper dive. And now I don't have the time to read all of our clients' books or do deep dives into everything about them. But what I would say is this, if somebody, I kind of view it as a reputation thing more on my company. And what I mean by that is if somebody comes to us and as long as there's nothing like blatantly evil about them or something, and they are published, say they self publish or they publish with another publisher, and we're just doing the marketing behind the scenes, again, as long as it's nothing like crazy or evil, I'll take on pretty much anybody, right? Because we're behind the scenes on that side of things. Now, if somebody wants to publish with Authors Unite and have our brand on the book, then I have like a full editorial team that is going to deep dive and read your entire book. Because if our brand's on it, we don't want to put anything out there that would have like a tons of misspellings or maybe about a really strange topic that we don't agree with or something, So that's where we got to be a little more careful.
Yes, indeed, because you you never know. But it's interesting that especially now when everyone is becoming an author with the help of AI, like overnight they spin out books, and sometimes it's their own expertise, but they're not writers and they're just spinning out books like is no tomorrow. And if can use as well your approach, hire you, and so on to become a bestseller author. I see there a disconnect. Like if these people have little expertise, all right, like everyone starts from someone, you start from someone, but they arrive there and they're facing the reality of business, life, and so on. And at some point, that will hit hard. And what they should do there, like you've been in that situation, like in which like you internship for people, you learn from them, you write your book, you see what work and so on, but you end up in a position in which you have no idea, like you're out of your depth basically. What do you tell them in order to get out of that situation?
So, a couple things. I'll try to answer this the best I can. And it's kind of using my own experience, I think helps. But I will say most of our clients nowadays, they're mostly like 7 to 9 figure entrepreneurs that are already established. And the reason for that is like we're a pretty high ticket, like done for you business. So, like, our average client spends anywhere from like 60K to 150K. So, if they haven't, you can't really afford that if you don't have some expertise. But my experience of like doing it myself, like that was not the case when I did it myself, right? And kind of what I think is this is the benefit, and I want to be clear before I say this, I'm not suggesting like put out a book that like sucks or like don't just do it for the brand thing. Like
That's
you
what
want
I
to make
wanted
it.
to hear.
Yeah, like I hate to be I'm glad you said that. Like I hate this quote of like the book is the new business card. And the reason I don't like it is because I think it really diminishes like what a book is. And
Mhm.
it's like, yes, that's true. It is becoming the norm in the business world to become an author, which that's where I feel like the luck was for me is I just happened to stumble upon that and notice it. If I hadn't written a book and gotten that feedback, I would have never known that everybody would want to be an author 10 years later. There's just no way of really knowing that unless you were in the thick of it. But regardless, I think it's like you're at different stages of your life, different stages of your business knowledge. And the reality is, in my first book, in my opinion, it was so so. You know what I mean? Like little 70-page book. But a lot of people did get value from it. And at the time in my life, that was the best that I could deliver. So I wrote for an hour every day in the mornings for like 6 months or so. So it wasn't like years, but I gave it my all. I hired a good editor and, we put out, I would say, a pretty good product for what I was capable of at 20 years old. So I just think everybody's at different stages. Not obviously most people are not at the Ray Dalio stage or Tony Robbins or whatever, but the benefit that you get from writing a book, and I can speak from like personal and the client's experiences, but more so personal, just because I started with nothing when I wrote the book, less than nothing. I was in the red. It just the perspective of you, the brand of you gets elevated so crazily that it makes everything easier in your life. Right. But I think the point and what you were kind of alluding to is if you're going to do it when I did it earlier on in your career, when you really haven't been through the battles of business and understanding the highs and lows and like true experience, then you got to be honest, and you just have to give it your all and just understand that people, once you become a best-selling author, they're going to view you in a very high light, I guess you could call it, and that comes with responsibility, right?
That's the word.
Especially,
Yeah.
yeah, especially if you're writing it when you have nothing and then people view you as if you're like, I remember when I was 19, 20, a lot of people thought I was like a millionaire because I was a best-selling author and I was still in debt. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I was just like, well, I am a best-selling author. That's true, but I am not this like huge success that it appears to be. So I just think there's a balance, but at the same token, I wouldn't say to not do it because the benefits really are crazy, man. Like it is a fast track to success. You have to put in the effort still, but it just opens a lot of doors, is what I would say. It just makes things easier.
Yeah, true. But I love the fact that you address this that way. And you mentioned that specific word, responsibility. Because indeed, when you share something in the world, and it can be even a social media post, or you go on a podcast, or you run your own podcast, and so on, you cannot just share something that if someone starts applying, something bad will happen. You just cannot do that. And of course, there are people that are doing that. There are people that are playing with words. There are people that are like, I don't know. I don't want to get into that, but to be responsible, I think is something that any adult out there should do. And speaking of podcasts, you have a podcast as well, the Tyler Wagner Show. Why you start the podcast too?
So honestly, that I started the podcast as a hobby because what happened is once my like again, I've been running the business for 15 years. So like it was probably about the fifth or sixth year when we got to like seven figures. And then it was like the 10th, 11th year when we got to eight figures. So, and I'm living in right now, I'm traveling with my girlfriend, but I'm based out of Miami. And I just like, honestly, what happened is, and it's funny to say because it's like that typical story of, oh, the guy with all the money is like depressed or something. It wasn't depressed, but I just didn't really plan for what the 4 hour work week would do to me on the personal side of things. And what I mean by that is I kind of subconsciously was building myself out this 4 hour work week type of freedom without being fully aware of it almost, like it was like it's stuck in the back of my mind the whole time. But I was working so much and then somehow I was doing like 100 calls a week for so many years and then delivering the services over the weekend. So Monday through Friday, 20 calls a day. And basically, I popped out the other end like 10, 11 years later, full time assistant, eight-figure business. And I'm in Miami and I have all this time on my hands. And I'm like, I only know how to work. I don't have any hobbies. I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? So, and you're in Miami, so I kind of go down a party path, and then I go down like working out 4 hours a day on the Stairmaster, burning like 2,000 calories like a crazy person on the Stairmaster. And ultimately, to answer your question, sorry, it was kind of a long answer, but basically what ended up happening is I was like, you know what? I really like talking to people. A podcast doesn't really feel like work to me. Like I would do this like on a weekend, like I
I
like
know,
this.
right?
Yeah, like to me, Joe Rogan kind of has the best life, like 3 hour podcast a couple times a week and get $100 million deal from Spotify. Like, what's better than that? I don't know. So I just started doing it for fun with the free time that I had. And I've done about 25, it sounds crazy, but I've done about 2,500 episodes. I will admit, though, the first 1,000 were very short. They were like 15, 20 minutes long. And then I started doing longer form like this. That's why I started it. And then I just fell in love with it. And then I kind of got burnt out from it. So right now I'm kind of on a break from it because when you do 2,500 episodes, that can burn you out a little bit. So if you can't tell, I go all in on everything I do. Like that's my only gear. I don't like do 20% here. If I choose something, I do it all the way. And then I end up having to take a break from it, basically, is what happens to me over and over again. And maybe there's something I can learn there, but regardless, but what ended up happening with it is it did help my business as well. But again, not the reason I did it, but what ended up happening is I would say 1 out of every 10 people I interviewed would ask me about Authors Unite, and then they would inevitably become a client in some fashion. So that was kind of a cool side benefit. And yeah, I'm definitely going to keep doing it, and I'm going to start it up again soon. And for me, it's just a passion. And I think if you have a business, for anybody listening, the last thing I'll say on is like, if you have a business, I think the ROI from it makes a lot of sense if you're doing it for that reason. Now, as far as getting paid from like advertisements like Joe Rogan and these like top shows, I will tell you, I think the total amount I've earned from ads is in the 3 digits, maybe 2 digits. Like it is very low. So, and I don't know how to do it really. Like I'm not an expert in that, but I will just tell you my experience. If you want to get rich off of advertisements from a podcast, it's pretty hard. You got to really work at it, is what I would say to that. So,
Yeah, I agree. Like this podcast, for example, it's in top 10% globally, which seems a
mm,
lot, but it's not a lot. I had clients that it's in top 1.5%, and they are making roughly like 60 to 70 US dollars from advertising a month, to put this into
dude,
perspective. But like,
gotta, sorry, I got to tell you this real quick because it's just exactly what you're saying. And I figured this out like a couple years ago. Listennotes.com, like that shows you the rank and stuff. So my show is in the top 1%, right? So sounds amazing. But like I just told you, what I've earned, and I think it's because of the amount of shows I've done. And I think in total, and don't viewers, don't hold me to this. I truly don't know my statistics exactly. Like I don't even know how to find them. I use anchor.fm, and in the back end, it doesn't even show me. Regardless, about 2,500 episodes, I think a few million downloads in total. Right. And then if you break that down, I think I don't know the math on it, but it's only like an average of a few thousand listens per show, I think is what that comes out to be. And yeah, like I said, that whole lifetime, potentially 70 US dollars for all of that. So, you know what I mean? Like it is tough out there. So, yeah,
it is,
just be,
but like you mentioned, like if you run a business and you have a
yeah.
podcast, can be such a like I am in the same situation. Like people coming to my show, learning more about me, learning what I do. Some of them become clients. Another reason why I do it. Apart from the fact that it's a passion for me as well. Like it started as a curiosity, as a learning experience. But man, it's fun because, like, imagine like talking with someone like you. That, as you mentioned, like you have an assistant, and I saw it. Like all the emails that I sent you as notifications, it's an automatic email with your assistant email inside it. And because you're a busy person and you focus on things that matter. But the point is that when you mix these things together, it's so much easier to build a business because, like, having a book, having a podcast, take you seriously because you have something to share. You had some background that's it's important and people can learn from. And exactly on that point, because you have more than over a decade in business, and it's quite unique, like you mentioned at the beginning, to run the same business and the first business for so long. Like there is something that you're currently doing or that you will stop doing soon in your business that you see no value in it or doesn't bring you any joy.
Well, I guess there's two parts to that, like the value and the joy. So I will say I still do love it, but I will say, I guess the right term would be excitement. It was definitely more exciting in the beginning when I was getting everybody bestseller and it was like new. And I was
Mhm.
like, I felt like I like hacked into the matrix or something. Like I was like, how did I like, I can get anybody bestseller? This is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like I literally got like a cheat code or something. And regardless, so that was really exciting. And now after doing close to like 5,000 of them, I'm a little bit numb to that, right? I'm still happy for my clients, but as far as me, every day being like, yes, we hit bestseller, like that's not happening really anymore. So excitement's gone down a little. And then I would say, kind of to go back to what you said about the AI, the book publishing world, AI is definitely it already has impacted it. And that's where I feel like we're pretty lucky in the sense that Authors Unite is like more a book marketing firm, and then we also do the publishing things. Whereas, most companies are like book publishers, they're not book marketing agencies. It's very rare. Like a book marketing agency, I only literally know of like 5 to 10 of them. Like it's a very niche thing in the book industry. I don't know why. I think it's because it's really hard to do, maybe,
Mhm.
but it's just like it is super. And that's been since I started to this day. There is very few book marketing agencies. But regardless, the ghostwriting, editing, publishing, that process already has gotten easier and will be very easy soon with AI. So I do think that side of the business is going to fade away, and most businesses that are only that are going to like go away completely, because in a couple years, and I'm not like an AI expert, but I would imagine in a couple years, maybe already, you'll just be able to talk to your AI and say, make me a cover that looks like this, upload my book to Amazon and publish it, and it'll do all of that for you. So why would you need a publisher? You know what I mean? Like it completely takes that away. So for the editors, ghostwriters, and publishers, they got to just be ready for that because it's going to happen. But for the marketing side, I don't think AI is going to like negatively impact us. I don't see how, because at the end of the day, you have to get real person sales. So maybe AI could help somebody do it themselves a little better. But at the end of the day, as well, like to get 10,000 sales in a week is just, it's hard no matter how you do it. So the value, to answer that side, I just think you have to kind of think, I would say in the AI world, maybe 2, 3 years ahead, because things 5, 10 years ahead, I just think is unknown, right? It's so, we can't even quantify how technology will multiply in a 5 year time frame now. So you want to look 2 to 3 years, and in my opinion, 2 to 3 years from now, the entire side of creating books, the publishing side, it's just not going to be a huge value to people because they'll be able to do it themselves by just talking to their AI. So,
Yeah, and I actually can see Amazon doing something like that because it will benefit them. They have the
great.
technology, they have the know-how and so on. Let's not forget where Amazon started with the books. And yeah, probably
Sure.
they will do it and probably they are working on it already.
Yeah.
Man, I want to end up with three very quick questions, fire questions if you want. One leads to the one that I asked. If you were to start a new business today, what will that be?
I would say it needs to be like people focused. It's kind of my second business. I didn't talk about it, but my second business that I have. It's a lot smaller than Authors Unite, but it's called Partner Profits. And basically, what it does is it helps companies grow their affiliates, so that they have, like, instead of having like 5 affiliates, they have hundreds to thousands of them. That's how we grew Authors Unite, actually, and we just implement the strategy into other companies. And the core point of that is I would start something, or one of two things. You can dive into the AI world and start something there. It's pretty obvious that's on an upward trajectory, but you're also going to have a lot of competition. And I also think like SaaS businesses and stuff, they're going to be so easily replicated that like you might have a good year or two and then there's going to be like another 100 replicates, right? Whereas if you start a people focused business, although maybe from a scalability standpoint, it might be more difficult, AI can't really take that fully away, right? Like helping a business get more affiliates, there is a person to person interaction that has to occur for that to happen. And so I think there is value in starting a business that is focused around people to people interacting, and that Partner Profits is basically that.
Nice, and love that approach. I was actually today in a mastermind in which I was the only one that is not making above 6 figures. Everyone was like in 8 figures range, and I was like, "What I'm doing here?" And
Well, you're in the right room though, I think.
yeah, exactly. And the guest speaker shared that like people first. then environment, and then the product. Because you can fix a product, you can alter the environment, but if the people that you work with are not the right ones, you might think that you can replace them, but it's basically you don't have a business anymore. And yeah, that was one thing. And so the other two questions I have for you is like, what was the hardest no you had to say it?
Yeah, I would say that the hardest no I had to give, I mean, I have both, but the hardest no I had to give was 2 years ago. Oh, yeah, actually, right around this time. So, November 2023, the Wall Street Journal bestseller list disappeared. It just vanished, right? So, right now, it's not currently available. It might come back, nobody knows, but either way, it's not currently a list. It went away 2 years ago. And for 6, 7 years, we were running 2 Wall Street bestsellers every single week. So 104 per year. That was the max we could do for that list. And we never missed, literally 100% success rate, never missed. And then the last year, two people that paid us 60 grand each, that's what we charge for it. They paid us and we got the sales. And then the next week, the list disappeared. They were no longer, they just vanished. So inevitably, because there was no list, both authors missed, and I had to refund 120 grand and the money I spent on the, because it's not full profit, right? There's a margin. So I don't know. I was fine, but and the money was whatever, but it was more about having to deliver that news. It was the first time that I had to do that at that level of that much money, and I just felt terrible because these were two business owners that spent, who knows, 2 years writing their book, planning their launch, and like expecting to get Wall Street Journal bestseller and use that to grow into the future. And they pay me, trust me to do it, and then the list vanishes. So all I'll say is like having those two conversations with those people was not fun. And they didn't, luckily they weren't mad at me because there was nothing I could do. I don't control that bestseller list or any of them. But it was still uncomfortable. Like I did not want to do the call, like I was in my house and I was like, I am scared, man. Like this sucks.
Is
So
that Jeff Bezos behind the Wall Street Journal? Maybe I'm wrong.
actually
I'm not sure.
I think I forget. Oh, Washington Post.
Oh, Washington
That's
Post.
the
Yeah,
one
exactly. Yeah,
that runs.
still
And
without.
actually, I don't know if they have a bestseller list. They do. I'm not aware of it, but they might actually. It's possible.
Yeah, but I imagine that wasn't easy. And oh man, yeah, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. And speaking of entrepreneurs and especially CEOs, what's one thing you wish more CEOs talk about more openly?
Oh, I love this question. Okay. So it's for CEOs, but also I'd say like CMOs and like online marketers, I would group in here. So I would say like, I wish they would talk about more like old school marketing and like sales principles. And what I mean by that is when you go online and you look at, and to be clear, I'm not talking negative about any, these are like people I look up to, but like the Russell Brunsons of ClickFunnels and who else, there's just Sam Ovens of consulting.com. Like these are very successful people. And I think what they speak to most of the time when it comes to marketing is you need a funnel and you need Facebook ads, right? And then they'll talk about other things sometimes, but they're like, all you need is a really good funnel and really good Facebook ads, and you will, you'll crush it. And again, not talking like they definitely teach more than that. So I'm not saying anything negative. They obviously have had success with this, a lot of it. But for me, when I was earlier on in my business, I tried those things and I found them to be very difficult. When you do a funnel and Facebook ads, you need to have like 7 or 8 things all go like correct for it to actually work. The ad creative, the copy, and then the funnel, all of the pages, the attention rate, the copy on, like it's just so many variables. So for me, that did not work. I tried SEO, I tried Facebook ads, I tried LinkedIn, I tried every paid thing, and none of it worked for me. What worked for me is stepping back and just being like, wait a second, who has a ton of my clientele that they work with, and how can I connect with them? And once I got that in my head, I built the whole company off of partnerships, just referrals. And what I did is I reached out to, we have 300 keywords. Just to give an example, book publishers, one of like our top referral partners, because they do everything up until the marketing and then they refer to us for the bestseller and like marketing beyond that. So we literally, once I figured that out, we reached out to every book publisher we could find on the internet that spoke English, literally tens of thousands of them, reached out to all of them, got on calls with as many as possible, formed an affiliate relationship. So it's just as something as simple as that. But if you compound it and you have a good product, obviously that's kind of the key. But on top of that, don't worry if SEO or Facebook ads don't work. They work for very few. You know what I mean? Like, especially SEO. Think about it. SEO only works for the few people at the top. You know, everybody else is getting the crumbs. So the reality is, if you go back to old school methods, just talking to people that are in similar industry or the same, you can grow to an 8-figure business just doing that. It might not be the easiest way, a lot of effort. I looked at my Calendly the other day. I've done over 8,000 calls on Calendly.
Oh
That's how
my
many.
God.
So a lot of work, but it's kind of almost guaranteed to work if you have a good product. So that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, and I love that answer. I literally blew up my business at the beginning by partnering. I was building websites and I partnered with speaking of SEO, with an SEO agency, and they had
Mm.
all the clients. I was executing the websites and just partnership. And it doesn't have to be at a huge scale, like with a lot, like you mentioned, like with a lot of people. But if you manage to find the right partner, it's so much easier to market yourself. And man, cannot thank you enough. And for everyone watching, listening, make sure you check Tyler Wagner online and check his business, because Author Unite, it's you hear him, you hear the insights, you hear how he's doing it. If you're planning to write a book, if you're planning to market your book the right way and become a bestseller, the link will be down below to check it out. And I want to end up with a thank you message for you, because you keep it real. And no matter the success and everything, you share the things that most people don't, those hard moments, the things that you wish to see in the world. And I love this authenticity. So thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having me, man.